Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. I'm Anthony Giuliano. My guest this week is MC Lowenstein with Sagent. MC, did I get all that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, good. So you just took a new job recently, correct?
I did. I started at the beginning of February.
Okay. How's that going?
It is going well. I have not been the new guy in a long time.
Yeah.
So it's been fun.
And you're working remote.
I am working from my bedroom.
So have you met any of your coworkers in the real world?
I am meeting all of them next week.
Oh, man. So are you
in Detroit.
Are you nervous? Are you excited?
I am so excited. We're all so excited. We're so excited.
Good. Do you know any of these folks from a previous life, or are they all brand new to you?
It's all brand new.
Huh.
I got involved with a mutual friend.
Yeah.
And here I am.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to talk more about that in a second, but let's talk about how you ended up there. And from our previous conversation, it is a long and winding road.
It is a journey.
Yeah. So you grew up in Fort Wayne?
I did grow up in Fort Wayne.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about what you were thinking you wanted to do, where you went with that, and where did you pivot?
Right. Ironically, I did start in sort of the journalism marketing path. Mm-hmm. I went to IU because I got a $500 scholarship going to a yearbook camp at IU.
All right.
My senior year.
Yeah.
It's the little things, I guess.
Yeah.
There I quickly realized that this is not necessarily what I wanted to do. I had no idea what I wanted to do. But the perk of staying in state, my parents said you could have fun summers. Mm-hmm. So I ended up being a camp counselor at a fine arts camp in Maine.
Okay.
And created an individualized major from that.
Okay. All right. Well, that's pretty great.
Yeah. So I have an individualized major from Indiana University in community education with minors in studio art and art history.
I didn't even know one could have an individualized major. I'm learning something new. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't either. And here I am.
All right.
From there, I worked as a residence director at a younger scholars college in Western Mass.
Okay.
Found myself down in Tampa, Florida.
Yeah.
Working at a children's museum, creating curriculum, running a youth program, did outdoor experiential education.
Yeah.
Facilitated low ropes, high ropes, recreational tree climbing.
Yeah.
All the fun things.
Yeah.
I worked at a gender-specific nonprofit.
Okay.
So I know all the differences between the sexes and how that unravels into being a teenager. And then I rolled right into being the manager of the youth development program at the Tampa Lowry Park Zoo.
Okay.
And I opened a youth center.
All right. So how long were you in Tampa-ish?
I was in 8 years, perhaps.
All right. I was there once. I presented at a conference, and it was super fun.
Yeah.
I stayed in a Airbnb that was actually on stilts over the river. It was super cool.
Oh, that is super fun.
It was like slanted, 45 degrees, the floor, but it was super fun. So where'd you go from there? You work at the zoo and then...
Right. Well, I feel like sort of...
And you took us through a lot in a short amount of time, so good job. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. I think one of my proudest moments was there in Tampa. I started a program that was an after-school program for teens and was replicated in the New Orleans Zoo and the Rochester Zoo.
All right.
And I ended up leaving for Denver right when we were going to take it on a larger scale.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a great project I worked on, and it gave me a lot to move from.
Yeah.
In Denver, I became a stay-at-home mom.
Yep.
I volunteered at a volunteer organization hub in Denver. Had a great time. Did the mom thing.
Yeah.
Moved to North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
There, volunteered at schools.
Yeah.
I saved a community pool.
Oh, wow.
I did the marketing for a 80-acre organic farm.
Okay.
And then found myself back in Fort Wayne.
All right. So, wow. Okay. So when you found yourself back in Fort Wayne, did you go to the brewery first? Is that where you were?
Right.
Yeah. So how do you go from that to I'm a marketing director for a brewery?
Right.
Yeah. How do you make that switch?
So I moved back to town under some life changes, circumstances, and hid under a rock for about 6 months.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I was using my brother's social network, having potlucks, various parties.
Yeah.
I met Paris McFarthing, who was really interested in all of my really random things that I just mentioned.
Yeah.
One of the things specifically, I have put together for the last 9 years a women's retreat outside of Denver.
Okay.
And he wanted to know if I had a business plan for it. And I was like, actually, I do.
Yeah.
Like, look at this. So he was very intrigued, and I just thought he was really intense.
Yeah.
One night at a Christmas party, he asked me if I liked beer.
Uh-huh.
And I said, no, not really. And he said, well, I'm opening a brewery. And I said, oh, that's great. And he said, do you want to see my business plan? And I was like, no, I do not.
I don't like beer and I don't like your business plan.
I'm having a drink and exchanging cookies.
I am very intrigued as to how you ended up working for this place. But
right. Yeah. So, and at the time I was trying to do a different avenue through education, and it just wasn't moving fast enough for me. And he ended the conversation. He said, hey, why don't we connect and have breakfast? We'll just chat, and I'll see if I can connect you with other people. Great.
Yeah.
So I came with my bullet list of, what I could bring to the table and what I wanted in my next job. I was ready to tell him all about that and how can you connect me? And instead, he sold me on this idea of a brewery.
Yeah. And this is Hop River.
Yeah. Yeah. In that meeting, we ended up driving to the building.
Yep.
And at the time, the building was a construction company and the warehouse for Phil's Hobby Shop.
Okay.
Now, being from having lived in Denver and done a lot of brewery tours, I knew right away this was a great spot.
Okay.
Of course, I knew the Wells Street corridor from growing up. I mean, Smokies, G.I. Joe's.
Yeah.
Love the Mexican bakery.
Hyde Brothers.
Brothers, all of it right there. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there should be a brewery here.
Yeah. Well, and that helps connect a dot in my mind because I think Paris was just named 40 Under 40, and he was associated with Hop River and Phil's Hobby Shop.
So he's the owner of both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I sent the obligatory, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Good luck with your ventures. And he said, I really want you to meet my, the co-owner, Ben Jackson. So we hung out at the Dash. And at one point, Paris turned to Ben and said, are we cool enough to hang out with her? And I'm like, yo, I drive a minivan. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And that began me being employee number one of Hop River.
Okay.
So my fingerprints are all over that place.
Yeah. And you were there for how long?
I was there for 5 years.
Okay, wow. Yeah. So we're going to get to Sagent in just a minute, but I'm going to take you on a little detour.
Please do. Because
during your time at Hop River, as the pandemic became, a real thing, you founded To Go Fort Wayne, correct?
Yeah.
And tell us what that is, why you founded it, and the rest of that little piece of your history.
Right. Well, I think it starts just a little bit before that. One of the projects we did in opening Hop River and making ourselves known was connect with all the other breweries. So we started the Northern Indiana Brewery Association. So having that network of really great industry folks to be able to bounce ideas off of was really important. And that has grown, especially knowing the mission of Hop River, being connected in the community. When the pandemic hit, it was a natural progression to have a quick conversation with a lot of the local industry people and say, hey, what do we need to do? What can we do to support each other? And it very quickly became apparent that if we had a public Facebook page, that we could communicate really quick pivots during the pandemic in a well-oiled way.
Yeah.
And as you all know, that has boomed.
Yeah.
We are
how many members now?
We're almost up to 42,000 people.
Wow. Yeah. And are you still involved?
I am still involved. I get notifications hourly.
Wow. Okay. All right. Did you envision it was going to be as big as it was?
No one knew it was going to be this big. And we have, I have 4 other monitors for that page, and we are in communication daily. and none of us knew. And one is a random acquaintance from high school.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you an indelicate question, but I'm curious, and you can say I'm not going to answer that. Do you make money off the page?
No.
Okay, so it's all volunteer.
None at all.
It's all just goodwill, promoting good things that are happening,
right.
letting the community take the lead.
And we have had a lot of those conversations, especially in the beginning. Yeah. We would have business owners say, I want to thank you for doing this, for helping. One in particular ended up being my neighbor. And I introduced myself and kind of mentioned what we were doing. And he was like, I was trying to give you things because you saved my company.
Wow.
You saved my company. And I think it's those stories that have made all of it worth it.
Yeah.
We really have connected to the community. And there's so many ways that group fuels itself and generates such positivity here.
Yeah.
I will say also, there's a lot of work behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We talk about posts in depth.
Yeah.
We talk about people and how they are interacting with the larger community.
Yeah.
And if they need to take a time out for a week, or if they need to be blocked altogether.
Well, there's a responsibility that comes with it. I mean, you're convening people, and you need to make it a safe space for people to have conversations. And if someone threatens that, somebody's got to do something about it.
And we also need to make it a safe space for other organizations.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. You know what? When I reached out to you, I didn't even know that part of your story. I think it was, I looked at after we agreed to do this, I looked at your LinkedIn profile and I was like, holy crap, she's the person that started this really great thing. So there you go.
Yeah, it's been good.
All right. So how did you get to Sagent? Let's talk about that.
Right. So the pandemic was hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Being in the food industry and the beer industry has been hard. Going into the pandemic, all of our managers were the ones that opened the brewery.
Yeah.
And a year and a half later, almost all of them made different choices to leave.
Wow.
Because there was so much different stresses, not because of the people, but because of the situation.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I think it continues because of, the employment situation, how hard it is to get and keep talent in this market.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So I saw the brewery through a lot. Amazing things. I mean, I still use it as though it's me and we. I definitely still feel a part of it. We hired an amazing new brewer. Ian is amazing. The beer is just fantastic. We've seen a lot of staff sort of come up and take leadership roles, which has been just remarkable to see new voices come in. And I think for me, one of the hardest parts was when our chef left. And I'd never stepped foot in a commercial kitchen, and all of a sudden I'm hiring new kitchen staff and taking a look at the kitchen and the fridges and the freezers in a whole new light. It was hard for me. Yeah. And I realized that there were certain things that I was excited about and interested in continuing answering those questions and how do we push forward. And then I also realized that there was a time where the brewery needed a new look, a fresh voice. And I started looking around.
All right. Did you ever decide to like beer?
I did, actually.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, no.
What kind of beer did you land on?
I am a malty lady.
All right.
I definitely enjoy stouts.
Okay. All right.
So
well, that's a pretty big jump for
there.
someone who didn't like beer to go right to the stouts.
Well, it's not that bitter IPA scene.
Yeah, I don't really like IPAs.
But I will say, I now definitely enjoy being able to dissect the taste and the flavors and the smell of a beer, and I can appreciate the process.
All right. Okay. All right. So tell us, let's pivot to Sagent. Fascinating stuff, by the way. Very, very interesting. Tell us about the organization, because I'm guessing most people don't know what it is. So, because it is behind the scenes. So tell us what Sagent is, what are you doing there, and why did you decide that this is the place you wanted to be?
Right. It probably couldn't be more different than beer.
Yeah.
Except making beer, there is a back end, right? Yep. There's the processing, the brewing, and then there's the front end of selling this product to customers and creating experience. So Sagent Lending, a company that I never thought I would need to know anything about.
Yep.
It is a SaaS company providing online software for bankers and lenders for mortgage servicing.
Okay.
So when you receive a mortgage and you get through the origination, and then all of a sudden you're receiving your monthly letters, there is a software company that makes sure you get those letters.
Okay.
So this software works directly with the representatives at the bank. We also have a product that is customer facing. So a lot of it is B2B to C. Why did I choose this opportunity? I was connected to Sagent, specifically the new chief product officer, through a mutual friend. And the Monday after Christmas, we had a 30-minute chat that ended up being an hour. And her energy, her excitement around the future state, this new direction of this company was intoxicating.
Yeah.
She is super human focused. She is revolutionary. She came in to completely disrupt the norm, which is antiquated as far as an entire industry in the service realm. And talking to her every day, whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's an hour, or just texting, is the highlight of my day.
Oh, that's great.
She's fantastic.
A lot of times, what I've heard from others is that you don't necessarily pick a job, you pick people.
Yeah.
And you can, sometimes it's immaterial what you're doing as long as you're surrounded by the right people. So Sagent, I think you mentioned this before we hit record, has been around for about 40 years. So what was the business doing before SaaS? Because SaaS is relatively new. So what was its origin? What were its origins?
Right.
And you can say, I'm new, I don't know. That's fair.
Right. And I'm really hoping that my new friends don't listen to this.
Well, among our dozen listeners, I'm not sure that anyone from Sagent is among them.
Oh,
so
goodness.
Yes.
So in the last, is it 4 years, Sagent broke off from a company called, you know what? I'm not even going to go there.
That's fine.
I can't remember.
They broke off from a company.
They broke off the company, and they were doing auto insurance and mortgage servicing. And they were like, we want to focus just on mortgage servicing.
All right.
The thing with mortgage servicing is that it's regulated like crazy, like more than your credit cards.
Okay.
Right? Thanks to 2008. However, banks are using systems that were created in 1973. So the literal paper and pen approach that many bankers are using does not work in 2021 and 22. So providing just sort of a whole new structure and looking at it from a different lens is really what Sagent is doing.
Okay. All right. And what's your role in that?
Yeah. So I went from being the director of marketing at a brewery with, 15 people to being the executive administrative assistant for the chief product officer, doing what I would consider sort of deeper, or I guess more complex things than perhaps you would immediately think of an EA.
Yeah.
Upon coming in, I am the point person for a $300,000 rebranding project.
Wow.
I'm also involved with user design opportunities.
Okay.
I'm helping to create the foundation, job descriptions, interview questions to create whole new product teams.
Okay.
I think very quickly, my boss and the staff around realized that I'm pretty resourceful.
Okay.
And I think you have to be working at a 15-person brewery.
Yeah. So how many people at Sagent?
Right.
Ish?
So at the moment, we are a little over 300.
Okay.
But we just acquired a 200-person company. So I'm looking at 500.
Wow. Okay.
So it's a really interesting time to be at this company that I barely know much about.
Yeah. So you mentioned the rebranding. Is that driven by research? How are you starting down that road?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I was thinking about this on the way here, how the process of coming up with a product and then marketing it is the same whether it's a can of beer or it's a software product. However, the stakes are higher.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what does that look like and what are the words around it?
Yeah. I'm going to tell a story and I'm going to solve problems.
Yeah.
How am I going to do it? Yeah.
Yeah. It's storytelling, right? And it meets the needs of the consumer.
Yeah.
Whoever's enjoying this beer,
Yep.
this software product. And so semantics, right? Like discovery.
Yeah.
So right
Yeah.
now, we've just started, we're in the process of discovery. So they have done more than a handful, 12 interviews with internal stakeholders.
Yep.
And then they have reached out and done discovery interviews with 6 clients.
Yeah.
Just to talk about like, what are the interactions?
Yeah.
How does Sagent employees, how do they help see how things are working?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah. And how do they describe it? Because a lot of times we marketers can use a lot of really BS-y language. And it's important to listen to, okay, but how do real people talk about it? And how can we reflect that back?
Right. Well, and I'm realizing very quickly that like every industry has their own language.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
For sure.
Like even around, I'm going to go meet with you. Let's have a meeting. Let's sync up. Let's have a huddle. Let's check in. Let's have a one-on-one.
Let's circle back.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's just hilarious.
Yeah.
And thankfully, my team has enough of a sense of humor that they can rally around my ridiculousness.
Well, good.
But anyway, so yeah, we're in the discovery phase, right? And working with a huge branding company, we have check-ins every month.
Yep.
And then we have meetings to hash it out
Yeah.
a couple days later.
Yeah.
And I am interested to see how this whole process goes.
Yeah.
And for the first probably month working there, I would relate everything back to beer, everything back to a brewery. Like, how does this look? How does this seem? Like, oh yeah, it's probably when like Paris and Ian were talking about this recipe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, oh, okay, no, actually we're talking about a product development, but that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a way of making it make sense. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
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 So yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, it's just a whole different. It's transferable skill sets. Yet I'm learning about content.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, let's go back to career path. Circle back to career path for a second.
Right. Let's huddle up.
You have done a lot of different things. What's the one best piece of advice that you have when it comes to building a successful career? What's something you learned that you think is important for people to hear, even if you think it's second nature? What's your best career advice?
I think it's important to know your strengths and utilize them. Mm-hmm. Right? I am a connector. Mm-hmm. I connect people all the time in my personal and professional life.
Yeah.
Because I have been able to connect with different people, I have been able to seize different opportunities along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably help other people do that too.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that really speaks to the Facebook group, right? It's a way of connecting people. Yeah.
Yeah. The thread that goes through my career is community and connecting people.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And very succinctly said, by the way.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. All right. Tell me what you think people should know, and you can talk about Sagent, you can talk about the Facebook group, you can talk about both, you can talk about something else. Something you want people to know about an entity you're connected to that's either underappreciated or a piece of misinformation you want to clear up or something you just think deserves to be amplified.
That is such a beautiful, broad question. And I should have thought about this earlier because this is such a great platform. Literally 5 different things have like passed through my head. Oh my gosh.
You want to come back to that?
I want people to show up.
Okay, tell me what you mean by that.
I want people to show up. I want people to show up in their community. I want people to show up with their friends and their family. We have these amazing opportunities every day.
But tell me what you mean by show up.
Just
what does that
show
mean?
up. Okay. For example, my poor neighborhood. I closed on my house April 1, 2020.
Okay.
Yep. I Amazoned everything, even toiletable brushes.
Okay.
I had been organizing bands for the brewery.
Uh-huh.
And about fall, bands were reaching out and saying, hey, like, can we play there yet? And I was like, no. Like, we're still being really safe. So I pivoted, right? That's a pandemic word.
Yeah.
Okay. I pivoted. And I ended up having communal outdoor concerts in this crazy, really tiny boxes neighborhood that I fell into.
All right.
And it was an awesome opportunity to provide an outlet for the community to gather.
Yeah.
And for bands to play.
Yeah.
And they ended up making actually more money in tips than they would have at our venue. So I showed up.
Yeah.
I showed up for my community.
Yeah.
I showed up for my musicians, my local musicians, and my neighborhood. It was also a really great way for me to make new friends. And not only within the neighborhood, but also with the musicians.
Yeah.
2 of the women that played, I have brunch with every week.
Nice.
So,
Yeah.
so show up, however that is.
Okay.
And I think the challenge for me right now is showing up in a company where I'm fully remote.
Yeah. Yeah. Where you can't physically show up.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because just today,
Yeah.
right? Just today, I sent my boss an email about some insights I had. And at the end, I said, I feel like I'm being bold here. I obviously won't say this way. And her email back to me was, no, be bold.
Huh. Yeah. Well, that's great.
Be bold. Stand up.
Yeah.
Show up.
Yeah. All right.
So anyway,
Yeah. So connect people, show up.
show up.
All right. Last question.
Yeah.
So what is something that you rely on? It could be a tool, it could be a tip, it could be a trick in your work that is important to you that you think people should know about. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking, but something that you think other marketers or anyone for that matter would benefit from knowing about.
Okay. I'm going to share this silly thing that I found out yesterday.
All right.
Again, I went from like working in an entire huge brewery space to working at this super teeny tiny desk that I painted teal. Not knowing if I needed a printer or not. I don't know. Like, do I use my little notebook?
But it was important that the desk be teal.
You better believe it.
All right. Okay.
I was going to show up and make it my own.
Yeah.
Do I use my notebook? Like, do I use Post-its?
Yeah.
So I ended up having Post-its everywhere.
Okay.
And I was telling a coworker yesterday about my Post-it ridiculousness. And he was like, do you know about OneNote? And I was like, I do not know about OneNote. It's like a Microsoft app, right?
Yeah.
And it just is a whole bunch of like little online, like filing systems that you have on one of your, again, a new thing, 3 monitors.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But one other thing, another, I think, up and coming design app that I think people should look at is Figma.
Figma. Okay.
Figma.
Tell me about Figma.
So Figma is
Is it like Canva?
it's kind of like Canva, but like it closes the loop faster.
Tell me what you mean by that.
So like if you need quick feedback from somebody,
Yeah.
it's like right there.
Okay.
Like, in a Word document, you have to like save it as this. Or
So
save it as that,
shared
or have
document. So
it's a
there's
shared design document.
Okay. All right.
With
collaboration tool.
right
Yeah.
with a lot more integration, so that you can have buttons that go to this or to that or a different page. So I'm just getting my feet wet with it.
Okay.
And we're looking at getting a couple licensing to try it out.
All right. So OneNote, Figma, Teal Desk, Post-it notes.
Yes, please.
All right. Well, MC, this has been super fun. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to this episode of the Asher Marketing Podcast. You have to get out of here and go to a baseball game, right?
Track meet.
Track meet. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
110 meter hurdles
Oh, boy.
in like 40 mile-an-hour winds.
I have thought of all the sports I would be bad at, and that's most of them. Hurdles would be a disaster. I don't know how people do it.
Oh, I completely fell over the pickleball net in middle school. So,
all right.
Way to go, son.
All right, so you're off to watch hurdles. Okay, well, thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who put up with that digression and who listened to this episode. We'll be back next week with another great guest, and we hope you'll join us then.